Hi folks, and welcome back to another Travels of Red Rover. I'm Shawn.
And I'm Corinne.
And what are we doing today, Corinne?
We're just going to go out on a back road ride with our local Jeep club and enjoy some scenery in southern Utah.
And it's supposed to be quite an interesting trail today with some level 4 roads, so it should be a really fun day.
It's a beautiful sunny day here in southern Utah, and we're getting the Jeep Gladiator out for a day run today. Just covering some dirt trails and exploring back roads for a little bit of variety. And for our day today, we have joined the local Jeep Club, and everyone's lined up here along the curb at a local gas station. And it looks like we're going to have an excellent turnout today with lots of other people seeing that it's a beautiful morning. We'll be shortly gathering for the driver meeting, and our group is usually pretty well organized. We have a leader, and then we'll probably have a tail gunner to follow up the rear, and maybe even someone in the middle to make sure that everyone's making the right turns when we head off on the back roads. Well, our group has found our air down locations, and everybody's getting their tires set for some dirt trail now. We've stopped at the Monquith Mountain Wilderness Study Area. We're not very far from the Coral Pink Sand Dunes State Park of Utah, very close to the Arizona border. It's a big HOV area, several campgrounds in the vicinity, some trailheads for HOV, and hiking trails as well. Well, we're heading off on our trail, and everyone's aired down, going through a bit of a sandy patch. We're not too far from the lead, and we've got about 30 vehicles with us today, so a good turnout. It's a new trail for our Jeep Club, so I think that got people quite enthusiastic, and we have a lovely day for weather as well.
Okay, we're all moving, and
we're still in early spring, and on our higher elevations here, we're above 5,000 feet. We've still got some snow on the more northerly slopes, and hopefully that won't present a problem to us with any waterlogged areas, but so far we've got good dry sand on our trail. We're going through an area that's a bit rutted.
Can you explain to us what that signal is?
And we're finding the Jeep is rocking from side to side pretty well. Beautiful area. We've got some lovely tall pinyon pines.
What's the repeater identifying it?
We're above 6,000 feet.
Yep.
And we got snow underneath the trees where it's been shaded. Lots of sand on our track, and you can see it's well used by the narrow vehicles such as Jeeps and side-by-side vehicles. It's a very popular spot for all sorts of off-highway vans, or off-highway vehicles. Our trail leader has led us up to 7,000 feet, and vegetation's a little thinner up here. We got a few of the ponderosa pines, lots of sagebrush and manzanita. And every once in a while, we capture a glimpse of the views out to the west and south. So maybe we'll stop at a viewpoint very soon and get an overview.
The views from this part of the trail are extremely pretty. You can see the big cliffs out in the distance. The trail itself is deceptive. There's a lot of fairly loose sand to drive through, but every once in a while you hit the shale rocks, and they can be quite slick, especially if there's snow on them. And when we get up here a little further, we're going to get into some rocks that have some steps on it. And those can also be a bit tricky to get across.
We're stopping for picture taking. It's pretty. Get grouped up really well.
We've come to a nice overlook here up at 7,000 feet. Looking out over there, beautiful desert plain, some mountains in the distance, and we're up above all these ponderosa pines. Some nice vegetation in here, a little bit of snow. We haven't had as much snow this year, so hopefully there's enough to give the water that's needed to this vegetation. It's very interesting, the vegetation we get in southern Utah, especially up here at elevation. We get the pine trees up here because it's so high, but then we often get some of the desert vegetation as well. From time to time we see prickly pear, and down here near the ground we have a manzanita, which means little apple. Very broad, waxy leaf on it, and in the spring it gets lovely pink little flowers. Later fruit show up that are shaped like little tiny apples. This tree with the short little pine needles is known as a pinyon pine, and it produces the pinyon pine nuts that are very popular for adding on salads and making your basil pestos. Here's a couple of the older pine cones at the top. This tree is a bit of a stunted version of the ponderosa. Sometimes they get a little windblown and less tall. Usually they grow quite straight. As you can see, they have a much longer pine needle on them, and they get some quite large pine cones. Great to collect. You can make a little bird feeder from them by covering them in peanut butter and then covering them in a bird seed and hanging them out in your yard. The trunk of the ponderosa is usually quite textured, and people say that it has an interesting vanilla or butterscotch smell to the tree when you go up and smell it. I think the smells are more obvious in spring once the sap really gets running again. So our group's coming over some rocky ledges here. Everyone's taking their time, making sure they get over on a good line, but there's nothing too technical about this. Our trail here is rated a 4, and most of the vehicles are well equipped to handle this terrain. Shawn and I have a little bit of a lift to our Jeep, which is coming down the hill now. And as well, we have larger tires and some rock sliders, so this won't be a problem for us.
Well, as you can tell by that little ugh from Corinne, I touched down. It's one of the things I've found since we've added the Harker cab to the back, the Harker EDC camping top to the back of the truck. It is great for camping. It's fantastic for all those reasons, but it does make me heavy, and you can see sometimes that I have to apply a little bit more oomph in order to get over some of the rocks. Rock here has some snow and ice on it. It also has a little bit of a step on the right hand side. The snow and ice can make the slick rod extremely slippery, and it can make getting up it a little bit interesting, as this Toyota is finding as it gets up and around the corner. As the day goes on and it warms up, the snow melts off and it's not quite as bad, but when it refreezes again in the evening, the next day will make it extremely slippery. And he had a better line on it going over that little step there. These can be really tricky for me in the Gladiator because I have to make the turn to the left to go up the step. But I'm also longer than a number of the other Jeeps and have to give myself room to maneuver my back end in without it going over the edge. Now what you can't see is that over on the right hand side there's a steep fall off. Here's an example of what can happen on the trails in the springtime. The snow is extremely slippery and the trail is very banked. So if there happens to be a tree in the wrong place, you can get into trouble.
We had a vehicle take a turn a little tight, and we have a nice little tree here that wants to reach out and grab you. So you have to bank further to the right and get around on it, going a little off camber. When they are going out with a group like this, it's nice because often people have a saw for trimming a branch or whatever's needed, but it's always good to come prepared.
Being the first people up the trail in the spring, it's often necessary to do a little trail maintenance along the way, and all of these folks are pretty well equipped for it. I should also mention that many of the drivers on this trip are very, very experienced and can help coach some of the less experienced folks around some of these more tricky obstacles. It was my turn to go around. You can see me trying to get up as high as I possibly can. Despite that, the Harker camper got rid of one of those pesky branches.
Some more tree trimming.
We're going through an area
We're doing some more bushwhacking here.
that has a lot of growth coming over toward our trail, so we're having to take our time and squeeze between the trees here.
So once you break out of the trees, you're driving along the top of the mountain. We're at about 7,000 feet, and the views from up here are absolutely spectacular.
So we've come out to a big view spot. To our north is the town of Kanab. Can't quite see it here. We've got a big canyon down below. So we have a lovely overlook.
So we got to the top and driving along the spine with the beautiful views, we heard the trail leader tell us that there was an obstacle coming up that was extremely steep and covered with snow, and this is covered with snow on the slip rock. Corinne and I decided that that was probably not something we wanted to try to do today, especially with the Jeep being as heavy as it is and knowing how it reacts with the snow and the slip rock. So I did not want to be in a position where I was sliding down an obstacle. And then on top of that, at least at that time, we believed that we would have to come back up the obstacle in order to return to the spot where we'd started. We learned later on there was another exit that you could get out that would take you back to St. George. So right about here, we made the decision to start heading back. It was a pretty uneventful trip back. Corinne and I and about 10 Jeeps all decided to head back together. As it turns out, there was another small group ahead of us. The only issue that we ran into is that the trail started to get sloppy and a bit muddy as the afternoon wore on and more of the snow melted.
Well, we've probably gone past the worst of our obstacles that make this a rated 4 trail, and we're going back the route we came in. It's got a lot of snow melt now compared to when we first headed out, so we're seeing a lot more muddy sand, but nothing significant that's going to be hard to get through. Well, we've returned to our air up spot where we plan to put air back in our tires, and we got a little bit of mud on us. That's, I guess, a good day in a Jeep is if you get a little bit of red mud. So we're going to do the air up, and then everyone in our group was probably going to split up and head their separate ways to go home.
So, Corinne, what did you think of our drive today?
Well, it was a bit exciting and confusing and interesting all at the same time, and we got lots of mud on us.
What happened was we got to an obstacle that apparently was quite difficult, and about half the group decided to go back, and about half the group decided to go down the obstacle. The much more experienced drivers and lighter vehicles went down the obstacle. Corinne and I decided to head back because we have the big camper on the back, and we're quite heavy, and going down slick rock that's covered with snow and ice just didn't appeal to me. So that's what happened. We ended up leading one of the groups coming back, and although there was a little bit of confusion on the radio, it all worked out just fine.
Yeah, and we got back to the air up spot. Everybody's airing up and getting ready to split up and head their separate ways to go home.
Right. Yeah, I sure hope you folks enjoyed this very short video, and if you did, please give us a thumbs up.
And if you'd like to see more of our videos, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and check us out for more content coming.
And as always, we love to hear from your questions and comments and thoughts, and don't hesitate to put it in the comment section down below. And until next time, bye for now.
Bye for now.